I am truly grateful for tonight. I have a good friend on with us tonight. There last year, I wasn't sure that he would be able to come on. But tonight we have Lenny Guercia. Uh, Lenny has been around for a while in EMS. I've worked with him in many big projects, many small projects. And last year he outdid himself. He he ended up getting tagged uh, by COVID, and matter of fact, I want to thank our friend JT Dunn for sharing that message that Lenny was in the hospital and he was sick, so we could get some prayer warriors going. But amazingly, he's here tonight, and what we're going to talk about is that COVID's real, and the number one. Number two, we're going to talk to Lenny about some of the how this all came about, or how his survival came about, the different steps. And then the one thing that we know now is if you've had COVID, you don't just get to like go back to work. That there could be long lasting effects. In my family, my niece, who works in the hospital, came down with COVID, and she was running marathons in the marathon season before she got COVID, and it decided to go after her heart, and now she can't walk up 2 sets of stairs, and she has some cardiac thing with a name this long. So we're here, and I want to again thank Lenny for coming on. So, brother, tell me, so what happened? Were you
Well, first of all, thank you, Chief, for having me on. My name is Len Guercia. I'm the Director of Outpatient Transport at Yale New Haven Hospital, a role I've been in about 2 years. I've been in EMS my whole life. I was a firefighter for a short time. I was a cop. I've been a paramedic now for 31 years. And make a long story short, I was managing the Center for EMS at Yale New Haven Hospital in the spring, or in January and February of 2020. And Chief, I'll apologize. One of my long COVID symptoms is that I have quite a cough because of some tracheal damage, but we'll get to that later. And so in March, when COVID was coming across the country, the leaders of the hospital thought that it was important for ACLS instructors, and we had many on our team, get over to the hospital, assist the nurses on the cardiac arrest response team, and teach them how to use the thumper device. And so in the third week of March of 2020, I spent a week with my cardiac arrest colleagues in the ICU, on the floors, in the ED, working with them, because as in most hospitals, there's a large cardiac arrest response team, nurses, doctors, residents, PAs. And in the pre-hospital arena, Nick, we take for granted, fire and EMS, we run a code with 3 people. Not true in the hospital. They run a code with like 12 people. So they wanted to minimize the exposure. So you know me, I step up for everything. I said, yep, I'll go over to the ED, I'll work with them. Sometime during that third week of March, I was exposed, I believe, to COVID. I had still been working on the road as a medic for the North Branford Fire Department, but I hadn't worked in like 2 successive weekends. And excuse me. And so I was sitting in a meeting I'll never forget, and I started to perspire. And the colleague said to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm really not feeling all that great," but finished the day, and things were changing. We had changed the format of classes for our EMT and paramedic students. They'd gone online. And so I was going to work to kind of like, I love work, so kind of keep the ball rolling. So anyway, March the 28th, I'll never forget, my wife said to me, "Come on, we're going to go to Yale Guilford because that cough sounds terrible." And I went to Yale Guilford, and I saw one of my colleagues, Dr. Tom Yang, who I'd worked with. And he said to me, "Oh, young man, you got pneumonia, and we think you have COVID." And I said, "COVID?" COVID's like 3 weeks old. How could I have COVID? And he said, well, he said, I want you to go to get a test. And the next day was a Friday. So I went to the inaugural testing at St. Raphael's campus in New Haven for COVID and got tested. And the next day they called my wife and said, your husband has COVID. And I said, okay. They said, stay home and stay away from everybody. And so I called my boss and okay. So fast forward about 3 days, and I don't remember any of that weekend. It was April 1st at 2:00 in the morning. And I'd been sleeping on the lounge chair in my living room because I just couldn't get comfortable like a pulmonary edema patient.
Yep.
And my wife came out of the bedroom and she said to me, come on, we're going to the hospital. And you know me, Nick, I'm not too stubborn or thick-headed like most first responders. I said, you're not calling 911. And so I said, drive me to the ambulance. And the ambulance bay is in the next town over. I live in Wallingford. We went over to North Branford. I knocked on the window and I scared the crap out of the crew. And the bay door opened. And I said to the EMT, I said, take me to the hospital. And I climbed in the back of the truck and I laid down on the stretcher. And a medic I'd never met before, I said, I don't feel good. We need to go to the hospital. And one thing I'll take from this experience is it's very unnerving when we drove out of the ambulance bay and my wife was getting smaller and smaller in the back window. Little did I know that I wasn't going to see her for 57 days. So fast forward, we go to York Street, the LER, and I meet my medical director, Dr. Alyssa French. And you know me, Nick, I'm not too stubborn. And I said, Alyssa, I'm not getting intubated and I'm not staying, so forget it. And needless to say, both things happened. I got intubated in the ER.
Wow.
By Dr. French.
That first night?
Yeah, my O2 sat was 68.
See, now I had heard that the weekend you don't remember was a terrible weekend.
I don't remember at all.
You were running high temperatures. You were just a mess.
Yeah, my wife said they didn't know what to do with me. So all that is true. By the way, I know there's HIPAA, but I heard from people after the fact who said, you were in the ICU an hour and everybody in Hartford and London and all over my graduate school classmates from California knew. So anyway, so I go to the ICU. I have very little recollection of it. I will tell you, Nick, that when I do my rounding now and I go visit the ICUs as part of my job, the sound of a mechanical ventilator stops me dead like a freight train.
Scares you?
Yes, there's a melodic clicking and beeping as the ventilator cycles. So I get out of the ICU. I was on the vent for 19 days. I was in the ICU for 22 days. And then I was in the step down. And I really had a lot of loss of cognition. And excuse me. And I remember technology, iPad, like I'm talking to you now. I was FaceTiming my wife and my kids, and they would ask me questions. My wife would say, do you have children? And I'd say, yeah, I have 3 children. And my wife would say, what are their names? And I'd say, Jake, Alexa, and Mighty Mouse. And Mighty Mouse is my middle son. And so they didn't know what to expect. So we go through, I'm in step down. Near the end, when I knew I was going to get out, more of my impatient personality, on the day I was going to get discharged, I kept calling my wife. I'm like, you got to get me out of here. These nurses are the water Nazis. They won't give me a drink of water. I'm so thirsty. And so I got discharged late in the afternoon. And I didn't know then, but I know now that my medical director, Dr. Dan Joseph, and some of my colleagues, John McFarland from AMR and guys and gals from Wallingford, they planned a big hoopla, and it was recorded by East Haven firefighter paramedic John DePino. And so I get discharged. There had to be 400 people out there.
Oh yeah.
Fire trucks and cop cars and ambulances and
you're going out on a stretcher.
I'm going out on a stretcher, right?
And I think that's going to play into later.
Right. And so it's kind of poetic because One of the crew was my godson, who was a brand new EMT. And I was like, Sam, what are you doing here? And he's like, we're here to take you to Gaylord. And, all that time in the ICU, your legs forget how to work from atrophy. And so I tell everyone on this podcast and everyone I know that Yale saved me and Gaylord gave me my life back. Go ahead. You can ask.
I want to ask, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but so when because again, all we're getting is the ABC and NBC portion of this. So when you were in the unit, did they keep you conscious? Were you unconscious?
No, I don't. I was intubated and sedated.
Okay.
And so I have some recollections. And again, I want to tell the story. And so I do kind of remember a couple times like waking up. And one time I found out later from a nurse, sorry, my dog is barking, that I'm always fascinated with 12 lead EKGs and my ability to read them. And so the nurses tell me later that it's like 2 a.m. and Tyler, can you get her, please? You have to edit that out.
All right.
That they were doing an EKG 12 lead. And the nurse said, I reached over and I touched the back of her hand and she held it up because she knew that I was a paramedic. And I kind of looked at it and nodded and went back to sleep. And so that's fodder for my family after the fact. But so
Wow.
that's kind of something I kind of vaguely remember. And then
So
my story. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
So again, the sound.
Sorry, Chief.
Okay, don't worry. This is real life, man. This is live.
Yeah.
So, but you said that the ventilator would, I mean, I imagine that would get me because that's what the biggest thing many people said was, don't put me on a vent. Don't put me on a vent.
Right. Because I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I'm like you. I'm like all first responders. We're caregivers. We're not good at being care receivers. How many calls you go on with your old colleagues have a medical emergency or get in a car crash and, they want to help. So I get discharged. There's that big hoopla. And I want people on this podcast to know that's not me. I'm a behind the scenes guy.
You are.
And one of my dearest friends is retired Wallingford Fire Chief Peter Struble. And his daughter was a nurse manager at York Street. And from the ambulance as we were driving away, because I had my phone now after 27 days, I said, Peter, I'm embarrassed. And he said to me, why? And I said, Peter, I'm not about that fanfare. And Peter's never said a harsh word in his life. He said, you need to shut up because they didn't do it for you. They did it for themselves. They kept their friend alive. And I didn't, I didn't realize it, Nick, but I do now. So we get to Gaylord. And now at Gaylord, there's all my Wallingford emergency management colleagues because, in public safety, I can't have 1 or 2 jobs. Yale New Haven Hospital, paramedic. I'm the deputy EMD in Wallingford. So there's a little bit of hoopla there. So go to Gaylord. They put me in a room and it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'll never forget, Maria was a PCA or is a PCA. She's probably a 55-year-old woman with a thick German accent. And she said to me, Lenny, we're going to walk tomorrow. And I said, we are not going to walk tomorrow, Maria. My legs don't even know they are with me. And Nick, hand to God, she came in at 5:30 in the morning. She turned the light on and she said to me, we're going to walk today. And damn, if 3 days later, she didn't get me up and get me going. And,
Okay.
And the backdrop of the story, Chief, is there are thousands of caregivers. Even just today, I went to visit one of the radiology sections of the hospital, and a young nurse stopped me in the hallway and she said to me, hi, my name is Melody. You don't remember me, but I take care of you in the ICU. And I tell her what I tell everyone. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for saving my life. And I said, okay, do I need to cut your grass or wash your car or what? Because I feel like there's a million people that I need to pay back. And so we had a nice little laugh. And so I go to Gaylord, I get better. Some of my DMAT people came to see me on the release. I go home for, I don't know, 3 months, made a couple of trips back and forth to Yale Guilford in the back of Wallingford's ambulance till my medications were squared away. When I left the hospital, the attending said to me, "Don't come back here." And I said, "Doc, what do you mean?" He said to me, "You got the COVID bonus plan." So I'm like, "Listen, I don't ever want to come back here, but I have to work here." So anyway, get better at Gaylord. I never realized what an impact I had on literally thousands of people, not only in EMS and fire and police in Connecticut, but around the country, people I've had interactions with. My wife got phone calls and texts and food and stuff. So I was forever thankful. And even now, not for what people did for me with the goodwill and the prayers, but for propping up my family. And so I get out of Gaylord and I get stir crazy now. I'm only home like 6 weeks. And I get cleared to go back to work kind of unofficially. And so my first day back was August of 2020. And I was introducing an ACLS class. We had about 25 nurses. And after the first break, I'm walking down the hall and this young nurse comes up to me and she starts to cry. And I said, "Oh my God, did I say something wrong? Is there dirt on my tie? I mean, what did I do wrong?" And she said to me, "My name is Allie, and I was your first ICU nurse."
Oh.
She said, "I can't believe that you're standing in front of me." And again, I'm going to say, "Oh my God, Allie, thank you very much. You know, what can I do for you?" And so she said to me, "I wrote you a journal at the direction of my nurse manager. The woman's name is Diana Lynn. And Diana Lynn felt that it would be best for us to chronicle care of a patient." She said, "Could I send it to you?"
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
"Oh my God, yeah, please." She emailed it to me. It was 5 pages. And it was typed. And it was everything from my first few nights and everything. And she said to me, "I know Carrie, who's my wife, and I know the kids." And she used to work a 12-hour shift, 11A to 11P. She said, "And at the end of my shift, every night we called your wife, we talked to your family." She said, "And on the 4th night, you were on the vent, you were on high vent settings." And she said, "And we didn't think you were going to make it." She said, "And so the attendant called your wife and they said, you know, Mrs. Guercia, we have to make your husband a DNR and we have to split his vent." And my wife, who's a microbiologist, said, "A DNR? He's 53 years old. We have 3 children. You can't make him a DNR." And the doctor explained to her that there wasn't enough resources and that a man as sick as I was, if I went into cardiac arrest, they couldn't put caregivers at risk to resuscitate me. And
Oh my
so
God.
in the letter, Allie writes, "It was at that night that my team and she had a team of 5 nurses, we decided we could not let you die because you were one of us. And Nick, they never met me before. They didn't know me.
Wow.
They just committed to taking care of me." She said, "And after about 8 days, a doctor had come from Boston, I think, because they were, you know, swapping docs around to share ideas.
Yeah, trying to figure it out.
And they decided to prone me, put me on my stomach, for those of you that are not EMS folks. And she said, we think that saved your life and you progressively got better." And so, you know,
Lenny, explain what splitting event is.
so
I think that's important.
because there were not enough ventilators in the beginning, and at the height of COVID, Yale New Haven Hospital had 800 COVID patients, and like 300 of them were in the ICU. The hospital turned medical units that hadn't been ICUs into ICUs. Split the vent means they're going to give me some time on the vent, and then they're going to give another person some time on the vent, or we're both going to share the vent. They're just going to split the pressure. And I mean, that's how desperate the medical community had become. And so, you know, it's been an amazing journey. And, you know, even today, I think I said, I met a woman who said, "Oh my God, I cared for you." And I'm like, "Thank you." You know, I really have to thank all these people. So fast forward to February of 2021. 22 now. That's how long it was, because I had taken a new position in the fall of 20, director of patient transport, because I felt like I've done a lot in EMS in 30 years, but I was in a sort of an administrative position and I wanted to get back to taking care of patients. So back in the hospital. And in December, a couple of weeks into my job, part of our job, my crew and I, we bring patients who are deceased to the morgue. And bear in mind, my transporters are not medically trained. They get CPR, but they were just as much in the thick of COVID as the nurses and the respiratory therapists and everybody else. And so it was a busy day. I volunteered to go on a morgue run with one of our young transporters, a young girl named Keme. And for those of you not familiar with the layout of Yale New Haven Hospital, the morgue is in a really old part of the building. And and so you have to go through a tunnel to get to the morgue. And so we're moving this patient through the morgue to the morgue. And I'm looking around and Kame said to me, are you okay? And I said, no. I said, Kame, I was almost a patient on this morgue car. And so she said to me sheepishly, she said, I moved you when you were sick. And I was kind of embarrassed to tell you. And I was like, oh my God, Kimmy, thank you so much. I appreciate your efforts and thank you for saving my life and everything else. And so now we're moving forward. I'm getting better all the time. And I nominated Allie and her team for what's called the Peace Award.
Yes.
And so the Peace Award is healthcare providers being recognized by their colleagues for outstanding service. And literally anyone in any hospital, firehouse, EMS agency, police agency, local public health during COVID should get the Peace Award. And so I buy a basket of goodies, coffee pods and chocolates and everything else. And I go up to the floor with permission. And I get there, Nick, and they're saying to me, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm like, thank you? What are you thanking me for? You guys kept me alive. All I did was get better. And they said, no one comes to see us. Sorry. And sorry.
Okay.
I told you about my voice.
Okay.
No one comes to see us. They either get better and go away or they don't make it. And so I've since developed a bond with Allie. I text back and forth. She's in APRN school now.
Nice.
And so she is one shining representative of an entire care team. And, it's just been an unbelievable journey. And
I think we saw the picture. Didn't you have a picture taken with her with the rest of the hospital crew, right?
I put it on my LinkedIn page. She got the Peace Award. And so I'm forever in the debt of Allie and literally thousands of people. And now, because of some long COVID lingering effects, I get an echocardiogram every 4 months. And I have some kidney issues. And my trachea is the worst bit of it. But, every day I get up and I feel the floor on my feet. And I say, okay, I'm 1 millionth patient plus one. So shut up, Guercia, and get rolling. So
That's called What's Next, right?
Yeah. So, that's the story. And then when you saw me speak, it was at the Mohegan Sun a couple months ago. And for those of you that don't know me, I also spent 10 years as the state EMS director in Connecticut. So I really met a lot of people. I say I'm the jack of all trades and master of none. And so the introduction was made by Dr. Gary Campbell, the director of the trauma program at St. Francis Hospital. And I try to be a humble guy. And Gary got up on the podium and he said, I'm going to introduce this guy. He's like the grandfather of EMS in Connecticut. He said, and on the day that we heard at our trauma meeting, our trauma grand rounds, that Len Guercia was in the ICU with COVID, he said, the whole place stopped dead. And so, that's the kind of I don't, that's the kind of reception I get. I don't precipitate that. I want to be behind the scenes. Leave the out front to the media relations people. But, there's Nick, there's like a million people that I need to thank. And so every day, my job is to pay it forward. And I retell this story quite a bit to this venue and others. I learned a valuable lesson when I was a kid. My father was a volunteer firefighter for 25 years in our town. He was a captain of the department. And he taught my siblings and I, one lesson. He said, the only time you look down on somebody is when you're helping them up from the street. And Chief, I've lived every day of my life before COVID and now double down after COVID to stay true to his words.
Well, I got to tell you, the reason, because we had to, I'm telling you, when JT posted that, it blew up.
Yeah.
It blew up. It was huge. It was humongous. And I'm telling you, a lot of people hit their knees that night. But part of, when you know this from, again, being around and being involved in bigger projects, there's probably back in the day when I was completely out of control, there was probably 6 people that I talked to, or that I was a group of, and whenever something was going on, I talked to one of those 6 people. You were one of those 6 people. I mean, because whether it was top off or trying to get someone, they're getting their R1 up, or the paramedics are starting up, or whatever it may be, that was your hub. That was your niche, right? And I remember even when we got into some of the radiation stuff, I can't remember the director of public health at the time.
It was Dr. Galvin.
Right. So there's all this stuff that we're dealing with and doing when we got the DMAC going. Oh my God. Yeah. And then, I mean, we were sharing, and I happened to be involved at USAR at the time, so we're in the same space. And again, we're sharing resources. Hey, we're going here. We've got this. We've got that. When they built the castle in Balltown, and we needed a place to be a command post, I called you, and I said, "Listen, can I borrow the trailer and maybe one of the 60-foot tents just for a week?"
Yeah. And you took me down that crazy 2-lane road with that huge trailer.
Right. But then, and that's not, I mean, and we heated it. I mean, you guys provided all that. We started teaching all kinds of people how to put those tents up. Yep. Because again, your thought process is we're one big team. We may not be wearing the same clothes, but when the truck rolls over or we have a plane crash, we're all going to be standing around in a circle. So we need to know each other, and we need to get it going. So you've done your dad proud.
That's one of the things, Chief, that I'm frustrated about my career in the last 30 years, is that I understand everybody has an ego. I have great respect for firefighters. My brother's been a truckie in New Haven for 20 years. I was a patrolman as well as a paramedic. But at the end of the day, there's so few of us as a collective team. We need to leave our egos in our offices. I've come toe to toe with EMS chiefs and fire chiefs and state troopers. And I say, wait a minute, we're all in this together. And 9/11 came, and I remember we all walked a little taller and with a little more pride, and people would say hi to us, and then that waned. And then, COVID came, and nurses and first responders were the top of the heap. And now fast forward 2.5 years, and, the healthcare system is so stressed out. Yeah. It's a difficult thing. So again, I want to reinforce for the viewers, I'm not anybody special. I was just a guy that got sick. And my mission is, if something that I can do now helps with research, or keeping others from getting sick, or just getting the message out, that's why God spared me, I think, Nick. And, and obviously to take care of my 3 children.
he looked down, he saw there's one of the good ones. We had to make sure we don't bring him up, that he's not.
Well, I don't know about that, Chief, but I think somebody might have had the shroud over me, but, you know,
I gotta tell you, more than one person said to me, and I won't say who they are, I don't want to embarrass them. They said they're gonna, I said, did you hear that Lenny is down at Yale on event? And to the one, every one of them, they said, well, thank God, because they're gonna throw everything they can at him to keep him.
yeah.
Right?
And they didn't just do it for me, Nick. They literally did it for everybody.
I know.
It's because I don't want to give anybody the
No,
wrong
no.
impression, but
No,
yeah,
no,
it's
no.
just, I don't know.
Nobody
been a sell-
understands, nobody understands the cleaning ladies, the transportation people, the food
Right.
people,
Right.
the keeping just, you're not plumbed for that much energy. You're not plumbed for that much oxygen. You're not plumbed for that much whatever. Right. And so now we've got engineering folks that thought they had the best things in sliced bread already there. And now they've stressed their backups and they've stressed their system. And oh, by the way, we've got so many people dying. We got to get them out of here. And we need so
Right.
much equipment. We got to get it in here. And I mean, just think about the logistics of everything that happened, and even like Mass General blew through something they've had for decades, and they blew through it like in a month, and it was gone. It was like a huge warehouse, and it was gone.
So in our former roles, Chief, you know that we lived past 9/11 and smallpox attacks and mobile hospital, and we made mass distribution plans for pharmaceuticals and masks and everything. And so
for the pox.
Right, for smallpox. And then I haven't heard anybody say anything about pox until monkeypox. And so, we made a lot of plans, and I think we forgot them. But I also think that, like when the chips were down, and I got to give a plug for the EMTs and the paramedics, our state finally woke up and said, hey, we have this cadre of trained people that can give injections.
That's right.
Let's backstop the local health and the hospitals, and let's start letting paramedics give injections. Nobody lost their job. Nobody's knickers got in a knot. And we used that resource. And, I think of now Deputy Chief Bollier in Manchester, who he and I have been on the Mobile Integrated Health Committee, Community Paramedicine, since it started. And Josh has been beating that drum for 7 years. And finally, somebody said, hey, let's get the paramedics to help. Those are the kind of things that, and I don't mean to stray off topic, but.
No, you're not. That's how this works.
Yeah, this is.
But along that same time, I'm like losing my mind. And I'm going, I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful to public health, but FEMA hands out stuff every day. They even have trucks. Right. Yeah. And then the second thing is, how are we going to do this? I said, we did all these big drills for smallpox. The school is still there. The cafeteria is still there. The lanes are even still probably painted. Matter of fact, we even probably bought all those cones, and we could do this. Let's go. Why do we need to go inside of a building? We did this. We practiced it. We even gave fake injections. Let's go. The system's already there. You just got to get the right people to talk to the right people. And
it was like giving away M&Ms for the anthrax drills, right?
Right.
All those
Anthrax. I'm sorry, anthrax. Thank you. That's what I was trying to come up with. We did all this. What are we waiting for? But I will tell you something that you would get a kick out of. So I got hired by Hartford Healthcare for just as the mega clinics were opening up. So I spent the first, I don't know how many weeks at Foxwoods doing the mega clinic, right? We were banging out like 890, 900 people a day. Mm-hmm. We were humping. So we're going, but back then it was so new, and we were waiting for the the injections, that I had people come up, hug me and crying. And I'm like, no, you can't hug me.
Right.
I appreciate that. Now, and then of course, at the end here, a couple of months ago, when all the deadlines were coming up for having your vaccines, your vaccinations, maybe not the same atmosphere, but we just said, listen, we're here to do a service. We're here to help you get through what you got to get through and do what you got to do, and
Right.
let's go. You know,
Right.
we were doing consoling. So we were consoling in the beginning that it's going to be okay, and we're consoling in the end, going, it's going to be okay.
And Chief, back to Top Off, that was an opportunity, and Top Off happened all over the country for military and civilian resources to come together. And the adjutant general, who's a good friend of mine, when I was in the hospital at Gaylord getting better, and I saw the military delivering mobile field hospital to Middlesex, and I said, oh my God, that 5 years of hell was worth it.
Yep.
Getting that asset in Danbury and at Middlesex and in other places, because people thought we were crazy in 2020 or 2001 and 2002. You want to spend $10 million to buy a hospital that we're never going to use. Well, it used it.
We had a fight somewhere, and because I wanted, and again, you helped us out several times with different projects, and we just wanted one of the big sausages.
On the pier, on State Pier in New London.
We did that, but then,
yeah. And then we also,
anyway, we got this battle
the
because the locals thought we were bringing the DMAT team in.
Right.
And I go, no, we're just borrowing their stuff. They'll lend
Yeah.
it to you. Yeah, they'll lend it to you. You know, you'd be
Yeah.
nice to them and you ask them nicely, and you
Yeah.
can do that, you know. And then, right, when we did the RadCon drill, we
Yeah.
used, again, that same stuff. The biggest one, without a doubt, though, was the I-95 truck crash.
Yeah.
The whole world changed that day. And
Yeah.
but again, all I had to do is call my buddy Lenny and say, listen, I need one of the big tents for a command post. It's going to get dark here, and we need to be able to meet in the
Yeah.
light.
And you
it
know,
was delivered.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chief, but having a boss like Dr. Bob Galvin, a retired Army 2-star, who was a doctor, and when he was 74, he was bored, so he got his MBA. Having an operationally minded guy like that made all the difference in the world. The mobile field hospital equipment was like 40 trailers of air conditioners and equipment. And one day there was a nursing home fire in West Haven, and they had no air conditioning in August. And so he said to me, do you think we could go cool the place down somewhat? And
absolutely.
So we brought me, my medical director, and 3 nurses, drove 3 trucks and air conditioning units to West Haven, set it up, and kept the place relatively cool. The other big deployment in Eastern Connecticut was when there was a fire outside the L&M. They had that fire in the electrical vault.
Yep.
That fried everything, and we ran the AC for like 48 hours into the ED. We couldn't cool the whole building. So,
right.
You know, the stuff didn't belong to me. It didn't belong to the Department of Public Health. It belonged to the people of the state of Connecticut. And I tell you a story, Nick, that's not related to COVID, but when we were doling out the H1N1 vaccine,
yep.
And we were in a meeting down in the New London area, and the commander of the sub base, Groton, was in the meeting. And so I stood up and said, with the authority of my commissioner, we want to give some vaccine to the sailors at the sub base. And some of my local colleagues said, we don't know why you want to do that. I said, because those sailors are not prisoners. They come off the base to go get pizza. They live in Lyme, they live in Haddam, they live all over the place. And the commander of the sub base, I don't remember what his rank was, said to me, you think kind of globally. I'm like, sir, I don't know anything about running a nuclear submarine out of the base into the ocean. If those seamen can't do their jobs, we're kind of all in trouble. And so I said to him, you know, the only thing that separates me from you is a steel fence, and you wear a uniform and I wear a tie. And that's kind of not just my demeanor, yours, Chief, and many of your colleagues.
And we pick a lot of their people up for.
Right.
And
so that's kind of the sentiment from COVID. We've gone kind of a little bit off the topic, but that's why I've done it all these years. You know, you want to be able to call someone. Nick says, I got a bad crash. I need shelter for my people. I got shelter in the backyard. We're going to bring it down to Nick and set it up, and
But then you also set them up all over the place so that we didn't have to come out of Brainerd for all of them, right?
Right.
We had them all. Matter of fact, we started actually training the CERT folks on how to do that
At Stone's Ranch. At Stone's Ranch. Yeah.
We did. We had all these classes. We said, listen, if we need it could be anything. It could be, like I said, a convalescent home where we need to bring people inside or whatever it is. And again, these guys just wanted to do anything. They just wanted to help out and do that.
And even then with CERT volunteers doing great stuff.
No, great absolutely. Stuff. And you know what? That I was involved with that. And then my friend, myself and Jeff Williams were doing it for a while. We had some good stuff especially when Jeff came on full time. We did some great stuff. Hey, he just started his own little company, by the way. But again, those folks, we did all kinds of things together, and those folks, they just want to help. They just now, amazingly, a lot of those went over to Sue at the Red Cross, and they help over there, and they help here, and help everywhere. So if this is too personal, then tell me that. Let's talk about something else. But so is your throat from being on the vent, or is that just from something else?
No, my throat is from scar tissue from being intubated for so long.
Okay.
There's studies now, and I'm going to probably misquote them, but you're only supposed to be intubated for like 12 days. But
I didn't even think it was that long.
Nobody knew that before they're supposed to trach you. But don't forget,
that's what they used to do.
This was so new that they didn't know. And so my trachea, the diameter of my trachea is 1/3 the size it's supposed to be. I've had, a couple of ablations, trying to open it up.
Yeah.
They work for a while. And then, they said, well, we could do a really invasive surgery and open up your throat and take that piece out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'll pass.
Yeah, I'll be right here.
Yeah, I'm gonna live.
There, so. Hang on. Oh man,
there you go. Fall down again.
That's an amazing. I mean, it's just crazy. I have a young man who was involved in a head-on traumatic brain injury, broke all kinds of stuff, got stabilized at L&M, and then got shipped. I think he went to Hartford.
Yeah.
No, L&M would be Yale. So he went from L&M to Yale. They fixed him up. It was like a MASH thing. They fixed him up a little bit more. And then he went up at Gaylord. Gaylord's an amazing place.
I said in the beginning, Chief, Yale saved my life, and Gaylord gave me my life back. They taught me how to walk. I'm not an egotistical person, but when Maria, and God bless Maria, she said to me one day, Lenny, you stink. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I haven't showered in a while. She said, we're going to take a shower. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I said, Maria, I've been married for 28 years. I've not been naked in front of anyone in 28 years, but my wife. And she said to me, oh, I seen it all. This woman didn't know me, wheeled me to the shower, started to shower, boosted me up, put me in. She said, you get clean now. And so, I got clean and took me back to the room. And, at a rehab center, you can't get a razor to cut paper, let alone shave your face. So the next day she comes in and she says, I took razors from my husband so we could get a good shave. And she took better care of me than anyone ever has. I want to tell you another story. I told you about Allie and the nurses, and I want to tell you a story about Jess, my nurse at Gaylord. Jess was my day nurse, and I learned everything about Jess. She was married. She had 2 kids. Her husband was a Mason. And after I started to feel my oats, if you will, I said to Jess, the food here is great. I said, but the coffee's horrible. I said, do you have a car here? She said, of course I have a car here. I said, listen, I have money, which I didn't. And I said, listen, let me borrow your keys. I'm going to run over to Starbucks on Route 5 to get coffee, and I'll come back. She said, you're out of your mind. I said, no, come on. I'll get you one. I'll get one. So my hand to God, the next morning, I wake up and and I wish I could show you a picture, but on the table, the
Yeah.
bed table, was a coffee and a smiley face, and it said, "Hope you have a great day, Jess." And so every day for the duration of my stay, there was a coffee with some creamers on the side,
No kidding.
even to the point where there was a couple days coming up where I knew she was going to be off. And I wake up and there's a coffee with the same smiley face. And this pregnant nurse, about 8 months pregnant, comes in. Her name was Karen. And I said, "Karen, what's that?" And she said, "Jess made me get up an hour early, stop at Dunkin' Donuts to get you a coffee." And again, they didn't know me from Adam. The only person they ended up knowing at Gaylord was a former state trooper, Kevin, who was the evening nurse. And after I felt, better, he'd come in and we'd talk, or we'd, listen to some sports. And I'm going to tell you one other story that's kind of comical. I have one of my best friends in the whole world is a guy named Lou Fogno. He is a West Haven firefighter engineer, now retired. And Lou called me every single day, and we would talk on the phone. And so one day I'm talking to Lou on the phone, and this very nice nice lady, business associate, comes in and she says, "Mr. Guercia, there's a phone call for you at the desk." And of course, I got to be a wise ass. I said, "Call for me? I'm in the witness protection program. No one knows I'm here." And she scurried out of the room and went, "Oh my God, I think there's a problem." So I said to Lou, "I got to call you back." I hobbled into the wheelchair, I raced down the hall, and I said, "Ma'am, I got to tell you, I'm a paramedic." I was talking to my buddy. I said, "And I'm really sorry, I'm a real stone crusher." She leaned across the desk at me, Nick, my hand to God, and she said, "My father's a battalion chief in a career fire department." She said, "I know what kind of ass hats you guys can be." And we laughed. So nobody knows the extent of people's caring, and not just me. I mean, my wife had a black notebook. When I read the letter from Allie, my wife made me stop reading it because had a black, like one of those English when you're a kid.
Yeah. The black.
And every date and time that Allie wrote, Carrie, my wife, wrote down, "This is what they called, split the vent. These were his O2 sats and everything." And
Wow.
and on the last several pages, she had a list of, conservatively, I want to say 200 family names and phone numbers of people who brought food here and gift cards and, offered help and cut the grass and do everything. And that's not something I'm used to. I'm used to going out and getting the gift cards and
Right.
being that.
I think, we're part of a brotherhood and sisterhood where we'll do that for you. We'll come cut your grass. We'll come paint your house. It's whatever if you needed a ramp to get in your house, we'll build your ramp, or they'll build me a ramp, whatever. That's part of that. I think when you look at some of the pictures or you watch some of the news accounts, you're getting the tip of the iceberg. Again, I like the little guys. I like the guys that if they didn't do their job, the famous guys wouldn't be able to do their job. I always spend a little bit of time in church camps and stuff. And again, I always walk up to the kid who's there's some 14-year-old kid or 16-year-old kid washing the dishes, right? And I tell him, I said, "Listen, if you didn't do the dishes, nobody eats tomorrow."
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
you brought it up earlier, right? Like the transporters that are on my team.
Transporters.
Until I got to the hospital, my transporters were using surgical masks, and I don't have any magic. I don't have any Golden Globe I can look in, and so I worked hard and got all my transporters N95 fit tested. I called on my old EMS colleagues. We did a blitz, and they said, some of them said, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Because I'm responsible for your health."
Right.
And you're right. EVS, parking, all the facilities engineers, who spent hours swapping out filters and keeping the water going.
When you put all that protective clothing on, even though the HEPA is they had the good ones that blew over your face. But even with that, you're wearing multiple layers, and you're
Right.
and you're not standing still. You're
Yep.
not sitting down tight. You're moving. The AC's got to be on. The environment is very, very important.
Right. I equate it to firefighters in level A hazmat.
Right.
We're out there on a 90-degree day trying to stop a tanker from leaking, and they come out of the suits, and the bottom of their boots have 3 inches of perspiration in it.
Yeah.
And you could back me up as a
No,
career
absolutely.
fire chief, and I'm thinking, oh my God,
Absolutely.
they lost like 20 pounds doing that.
And that was the other thing that we saw. We just saw a lot of people. That's a hell of a way to go on a diet. But we saw a lot of people that lost tremendous because they weren't able to eat, right? So obviously, if you're not, you're getting your food another way. If you're on the vent, but even like the employees, they're not getting. I mean, it's like rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll.
Right.
Try to get some sleep. We're coming back tomorrow, and then again, all the acne is breaking out, and it's
many of the staff, and I think this happened all around the country. Many of my transporters didn't leave for days.
right.
They knew we needed help. They didn't know what they could potentially bring home to their families. This was before I got there. They set up cots. Many of the nurses and the BAs and the environmentals, they stayed. And the one good thing about COVID is I lost 52 pounds. And since then, because of lack of sleep, and I've put it all back. I said, geez, I want to get COVID again just to lose weight.
No, you don't. No,
I really don't. So, Nick, my one message to everybody, and again, got COVID and got better, is treat everybody with respect. It doesn't matter where you are in life. You could be the president of the United States or an intoxicated person in New London. Just be nice to everybody. I mean, so much bad stuff happens to people every day. And I do think that in the public safety and public health arena, and you're closer, things have gotten better. They're not as good as they were in the weeks after 9/11, but I think they've gotten better. And we've proven that, we can step up, because when COVID came, there was no cavalry. There was no 911. There was nobody else coming. So
it's just amazing and again, everybody is like, what do you need? And why do I have to do that? And all this stuff. So like, listen, you can believe it's real, believe it's not real, believe whatever you want. But I said, but when you see people that are really sick and they're really sick, it'll get your attention. Right.
And it was indiscriminate. I mean, I didn't know. It's not like you saw a cloud of methyl green shit coming out of a tanker and you knew to stay away from it. I don't know where I got it or when I know I got it in the hospital, but who the patient was, or so.
Even like the N95s, I was get very upset in the beginning because doctors were giving all their seniors N95s. Good idea. They just didn't tell them how to wear them. They said, "Oh, here's a mask. Take a mask. Take a mask." Right. So now I got guys walking around like this. I got guys walking around like this. And nobody had two straps on.
Yeah.
It was just like, what I do is if I'm doing a house call, I'm wearing an N95. If we're doing like if someone's required to have a mask on, depending on where it is. If I was in the hospital, I'd wear an N95.
Yeah.
But if it was, a theater or something else, I was wearing a surgical mask. But again, through my job, I'm fit tested because we use APRs and all that stuff, as part of the deal.
So I'm fit tested as well, and vaccinated and boosted, and the one thing I regret is that I can't be a medic again. Nothing's prohibiting me, but my cognizance is not all there. And I don't ever want to be in a position where someone needs me and I can't remember a protocol. But I have started to ride third as an EMT.
I was going to say, I thought you were riding third to help out.
Yeah. And I'm trying to help them with a little QA. And, my daughter's going to go to college for nursing in the fall. And
nice.
I have a free.
Yeah, you picked, where's she going?
She's going to University of Miami.
That's right.
And
That's
I have a
right. I remember
Son
that.
who's in the pre-med program at Louisiana State. My older son works in industry.
So
And,
you are going to
so-
be working for a while.
Yeah, till I'm 80. I've been practicing the welcome to Walmart, you know. The summer seeds are in. What would you like to grow in your garden? But
I'll tell you a funny story. There was a guy from New York City who retired from New York, came out to the submarine base, Chief Curley. Oh, was he funny? He was a sharp dude. And but when he got all done at the base, he went to Ames
yeah,
before there was a Walmart. He went to Ames and he was that guy. He was that guy out front. He was great. He was
Yeah.
great at it, you know, because he's just a friendly guy. And that's what you need out there. You don't need somebody, you know, barking rules at you.
well, you know, Chief, I gotta say I'm honored to you and your colleague Jamie. I'm sorry about the dog was barking.
It's all right.
But you said to give you the high sign. I'm starting to run out of gas. When I start to really sound like Darth Vader, you know that time for me to give my voice a rest.
Well, listen,
I'm really honored to be part of
No.
this, and hopefully somebody that hears this or takes a few minutes to watch it knows that COVID didn't care who you were, didn't care what your zip code was or how much money you made. Chiefs and Indians and everywhere in between got sick, and a million plus people died. So
and it gives some hope to those with family who are sick and are sick, that there is an opportunity, there is a possibility that it's going to be okay.
yeah,
I can't imagine communicating with my wife and my kids over a iPad.
Yep.
No, man.
and when you know when
Things are dire.
to protect the team, obviously no one went in the hospital other than patients, and no one went into Gaylord, and they did window visits.
Yeah.
After you got strong enough and you could walk, your family could come to the main entrance in 10-minute intervals and stand